Meaning of a communication, another classic. The meaning of a communication is the response that comes back at me. I go up to a pretty girl and I go, I love you, and she smacks me in the face. What was the meaning of the communication? No, the smack in the face. That's it. It had nothing to do with my intention. It had everything to do with what comes back at me. And this is it's an echo effect. If I say something, that which comes back is the meaning. There's no argument on this. This is just the way it is. If I go, I love you, and I get hit in the head, love you equals hit in head for that person. That's the meaning of that communication, is the kiss that comes back. So for that person, I love you equals the kiss that comes back. Okay? If I say I love you and she starts taking her clothes off, that's what the meaning is. Get the deal? Yeah, and yeah, often we're very arrogant in that I said this and it means this. And I'm going, no, it doesn't. It means whatever comes back. How many of us have been guilty of that one? All the time. You know, and you go, well, what's wrong with you? I've said this. And you go, but then they're going, and of course we come back to what's wrong with you, which really means you're going to have to get used to that one, guys. It's a good, whenever you're blaming someone else, remember the finger. Law of requisite variety. I like this one. I do. There's some that that you just go. The most flexible element or person or within a system will eventually end up controlling the system. Not the biggest, not the ugliest, the most flexible. Now the classic of this is, how is it possible that a sheepdog can round up a herd of sheep? The dog and the sheep will run at approximately the same speed. There's more of the sheep, so why is it possible that the dog can herd the sheep? And why is it possible that they can herd the sheep faster in winter than they can in summer? They are more flexible. And what is the flexibility that we're measuring on?
The way they...
Nope. Because intelligence, strangely enough, is pretty much on par. Their turning circle is significantly smaller. That's why. And they can't bend in the middle as much. What's one of the most flexible animals on the planet? Human being. Okay, we can rotate on a spot. So that's why a matador can fight a ton of bull. Because of that flexibility. Nifty? Another fact for human beings, why are there so many human beings on the planet? Many behaviouralists would tell us, it's because we have an opposable thumb which gives us the ability to grip and we have a larger brain. I actually think it's a little bit lower down in the body than that. Okay? It's our stomach. Human beings can eat pretty much anything. We can eat insects, we can eat meats, we can eat grasses, we can eat fungi, we can eat fish, we can eat seaweed, we can eat fruits, we can eat vegetables, we can eat pretty much anything. Another flexible component to human beings. When is our mating season? Every day of the week. Okay? What time is it? Okay. No, that's Santa. I'm sorry. That's Santa. That's Santa Claus. Okay. We need to have a talk. It reminds me of the joke of this guy comes in with a bunch of union delegates. He says, look, we've got this professor coming in from the psychology department of the university. He's here to ask you a few questions. And they're all there. And, guys, because you're good union members and good working class people, he wants to ask you how often you have sex. He says, so how many people have sex once a day? And a few hands go up. Once a week, a few more hands go up. Once a month, a few hands go up. And he says, right, every 6 months, 1 or 2 hands go up. And he says, once a year, and a hand goes up. And he says, do you have sex once a year? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And why are you so happy? Tonight's the night. Tonight's the night. I think that might get edited out. Okay. So the mechanics of all of this are just, that flexibility. Pandas, for example, are on the other end of the spectrum. Watching a documentary on a Chinese zoologist, his thing was, we have done everything to keep these rotten animals alive. He's there to protect them. We've done everything. If they become extinct, it's their own bloody fault, was the translation. They are the second most difficult animal on the planet to sex, meaning is it a male or a female? They're so confused about possibly their own sexuality that they don't even know whether they're a male or a female. They have sex so infrequently, possibly because they don't know, hey, could be gay, They only eat 1 or 2 types of bamboo, which is only found in one particular region. We've done everything to try and keep them alive. And the probability of not keeping them alive in the wild is pretty remote, because they're like a biological dead end. Koalas, do you realize that they only eat eucalypt, but a particular type of eucalypt? Of the 220 something different varieties of eucalypt, only 12 have narcotic qualities. Gee, which 12 do koalas eat? Pretty much, yeah.
There's all 12. They've got different levels
of munchiness.
Yes. So they'll go through the top level.
Yeah, they will eat the bottom, but by the time it gets to no narcotic quality, they're not having it. Yeah. Okay, and you just thought they were happy. Okay. They were, okay. We understand the mechanics of this. So again, we're looking at something like a koala, and because it's restricted to that food supply, then that's the region that it can live in. Human beings, on the other hand, can live from subarctic to tropical, and everything in between. And what can they eat? And if they can't eat that, they'll eat this. If they can't eat that, they'll eat something else. And that becomes the behavioural flexibility. So that's really what I'm going to be pushing you on is, yes, are you fixed in a narrow way of doing things? Or are we going to have to increase your behavioural flexibility to do something other than what you would consider? And I would have to say, this is the biggie, okay, for this particular group. Okay? Each group has their own little conundrum. Okay? And sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's relationships, but I'd have to say with you guys, behavioural flexibility is the one. Reading through your sheets and reading what your body language of how we've been talking to you today, that's the subject. Because I am this thing. And you know what happens when you go, I am this thing? It excludes that thing that's beside. And you are all of these things. And you have the potential for being all of these things. You know how extreme this is from a human being perspective? Group of islands in the Bahamas. Okay? Isolated area, very, very isolated area. And around 80 years ago, they were doing the research on this particular group of islands, where they found that their male population frequently was, very seriously decimated on an ongoing basis. This becomes a problem. There's too many females and not enough males. So what is the solution? No. Turn the females into males. And they have all of the photographic evidence of these people going through their transition from female into male. And they become fully functioning males. About a 2.5 year time period, but that's all it was. All it took. Clitoris extending, okay, the ovaries dropping down into the inner lips, of the vagina. All the photographic evidence is there for it to occur. That's what I'm saying. Please hear, when I talk about change as being... Now, they didn't know that it wasn't possible. In the islands of Tahiti, sexual activity was commonplace. You know, and uncles and, you know, would sleep with, you know, like, you know, the younger people, and boys and girls would. Sexual activity was an absolutely normal, common thing. Because only married people have children. And so nobody got pregnant until they were married. You get the brain drives the bus, okay? The brain controls so much. The brain, the mind and the body are linked, okay? And the research, and that worked really effectively until the Christian missions got to the country, and that just, yeah, and then that messed all of that. But it was still operating in the time of Captain Cook. So when the first, do you know where the word missionary position actually comes from? Yes, it does. In the area of Polynesia, because the Catholics sent out the priests to do the conversion, and they sent out missionaries to do conversion work, and they realised that they were just not getting the conversions, okay, across into Christianity, and they couldn't explain why. And the mission had to go back to the Pope and go, you know, sorry, we're not getting the numbers, and they had to explain as to why they weren't getting the numbers. And grass huts are not that private. And so what they noticed was that the Christians from England and from Europe were having sex where the male was on top of the female, which is absolutely forbidden, and only heathens would do that in a Polynesian culture. The female has to be on top so that she controls the actual timing of the whole thing. And so these missionaries had to go back to the Pope and go, well, the reason that they're not converting is because they've seen us make love, and we do it in this position. And that's why the position became the missionary position. You see, history gives us so much information. You know, it really, really does. It really, really does. And there leaves a trail of information. And yet, if we're not, like, for how many years have people been paying income tax in Australia? Or throughout the world, for that matter. Right. And you'd be wrong. Okay? It's no more than 60 to 70 years. But you see how it's become, we think of it as forever, but prior, okay, to that period of time, the only taxes were business taxes and tariffs. That was it. The American War of Independence is based on tariff, not on income tax. Tax on tea. There was no income tax, and yet we think of it now as if it's been there for... What is the legislation on taxation? Pass. And strangely enough, a lot of it is completely and totally against the Constitution, which we don't have through federation. Paying income tax is a completely and totally illegal act, or collection of income tax is completely and totally illegal. You go, huh? See, after the First World War, Australia was a signatory, okay, in the main treaty. But it had to be a sovereign state, separate to England. So they had to come back and form a referendum to sign off on a constitution, not a federation. It never happened. Every piece of tax that's been collected since that time is an illegal act. So you can go to jail for it, but there's actually no legislation for it. This is also very true for the United States. There's not a single piece of legislation that says income tax is an essential part of the GST, by the way, is directly against the law, because under the rules of federation, no individual may collect or act as a tax collector. Remember I said there's laws that are for and laws that are against? Okay, and there's way more laws that are against, but if you're in power, you can choose to ignore certain things and put certain...
High Court does. Politics will actually brought that up.
Yeah.
Go through it. I didn't read it, but you can go and check the High Court transcripts and do this.
One individual, I think, did a very lovely thing. He got a group of people together and declared war on Australia. Sent the declaration of war to the United Nations. Okay, and so the United Nations accepted it, which was wonderful. Nobody turned up to fight the battle, so they won. And they claimed all Crown land as their own. And because they were a sovereign state, seen by the United Nations as a sovereign state, any attack against them would be that they would just go, excuse me, Australia has just attacked us, you need to defend us. And how much did anybody who became a member of this particular organisation paid no income tax? No GST. Australia. No, that was a different organisation, but they did something very similar.
Why?
Yes. Thank you. Because for example, a lot of the things are signatories. For example, the Hague Convention on Children. You have to be, if you're a country, you have to sign to be a member. But if you don't sign it, then none of the laws apply. I found this out the hard way. Okay. Now, the country may only be made up of 5 people. Isn't that bizarre? But it's just the way things are. Get how weird this is? We are so indoctrinated into a way of thinking that this is the truth. The way we're taught to think is the way it is. You go, hang on, you actually scratch the surface. And we are so gullible, often, to accept these things just as the way it is. So the law has got a lot of stuff. The politics is just rife with it. Wonderful stuff. Start getting into the history of it. And so I'm going to say the law of requisite variety is going to be one of the big things for personal development. You can be significantly more. But if you're trapped into, I can only do this, then that's all that you will do. Ever heard of the baby elephant syndrome? No? Okay. Lovely concept. Basically what you do is you get a baby elephant and you put an anklet around it and you peg the anklet into the ground. It can't get away, but as it grows, you don't increase the length of the peg. But as an adult, it can't get away as a child, so it never attempts as an adult. How do you create a flea circus? This is really testing. What you do is you put fleas into a jar as eggs, and then they hatch, and they bounce, and they hit the top of the lid, and after a while they realise that hurts, so they don't bounce as high. Then you can take the lid off, and the fleas will stay in the container. You've trained them not to jump as high, because it hurts. Do you get how ridiculous this is? What's the difference between fleas and humans then? And I'm saying, look, the top is off the jar, you can jump a lot higher, but you have to be aware of what is a real limitation and what is an imposed limitation. And a lot of you would get depressed in your day-to-day life, and I'm guessing that's a good reason why you're here, because there's an argument going on the inside of your own heads between what you can do and what you will allow yourself to do. What your dreams and aspirations are, okay, and hitting your head on the top of the jar from an illusion that's been put in place for you. So law of requisite variety is going to become like a bit of a catchphrase, and you will hear me do it. The most flexible element, not the biggest, not the strongest, not the ugliest. Remember I was talking about the boilers in the buildings. huge monoliths of engineering. Okay, all of the piping that runs through, all of the energy and the fuel that goes to burn, to heat the water, what's the thing that controls that whole system? $5 piece of technology that sits on the wall called a thermostat. Okay, because it can change where everything else is fixed. Isn't that's where it gets to a point of being ridiculous. We look at who will always win, criminals or police. Every time. They don't have to clock in, they don't have to clock out. There's no rules that they have to follow. Have we got a visitor? Oh, that's good. I'm glad that we've got a visitor. Okay. Do you understand the mechanics of it? So they're not bound by, stop or I'll shoot. They just shoot. Okay? They don't have to warn people to do stuff. They just do stuff. Because they've got more behavioural flexibility. Or isn't that did you hear the man say, did you hear the man say stop? He said, yes. The policeman that was there, he went bang, 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 freeze. Okay. The thing is that behavioural flexibility is going to become one of the big things. If you can't do it one way, do it another, which of course links into no failure, only feedback. Get how this dance runs together? Good. Let's finish it up with that one. That's it. We're going to do some more. We did that one a little while back.